Good job for you.
You did it.
Enforcement.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order this evening's session of the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order and have an adoption of the agenda.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor so signify. Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Believe it or not, we also need to approve the March 14th, 2019 minutes. Does anybody have any changes or corrections that need to be made to it?
They've already been made. This Tom's got something.
No, I'm just showing people there is minutes. This is what we're.
Oh, yeah.
So do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you to both of you. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please so signify.
Here we go.
Any opposed? Minutes have been passed. Onwards we go to election of officers. So these elections shall be conducted annually at the first scheduled meeting following the June 30th date. Nominations by the voting members shall be accepted from the floor, and the successful candidate shall be elected by majority vote. The term for the office for the position of chairperson and vice chairperson shall be for 1 year with the right to succeed himself or herself for an additional 1-year term. Are there any nominations from the floor? Yes, Jill.
Yeah, go ahead.
I nominate Diana and Tom for another term.
I second.
There you go.
Third.
There you go.
Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Jill as chairman and Jim Dorn as vice chairman.
No, thank you.
So Jill has declined.
No.
Jim?
What? I'm thinking hard.
Of accepting or declining?
There was a second to the first motion. What are we going to do with that?
We'll vote after we close the.
Nominations.
Have you decided to drop your nomination?
I didn't say
No.
that. I nominated you as a vice.
We're getting additional nominations. So the two of us have been nominated and the two of you were nominated.
It's called
Jill
having a choice.
Jill has declined. So are you declining or accepting your nomination?
Whatever anybody wants. They want to vote which way and
So which one was he?
Vice.
Vice. So we got me for chair and we have
Tom for vice chair.
Tom and Jim
Oh, me.
as the choices for the vice chair.
Nobody went against you?
Nominations are still open.
No, I thought there was a, no.
Jill declined.
Okay. Yeah. All right, now, what?
I've done my time,
We're gonna
thank
vote on this
Now
so we
we
can
have
vote
to
for
find
it.
out if there are no other nominations, we'll close nominations and vote. So any other nominations?
I'll make a motion, close the nominations as they stand, so we have to do that officially, real nice,
Okay.
Madam Chairperson.
I second it.
Well, since we're gonna be voting on who the people are, Wally, when we've had a choice, we've multiple slates. Who goes first, the chair or the vice chair position?
I would do, since there's.
I'm the only one.
Yes.
All right, so there's not really a vote with that one, so we'll go with the vice chair. So we have Tom and Jim. So since it's an open position, does it have to be
Yep. you
hand
have to-
vote?
Yes.
So all of those in favor of
I don't,
Tom Nichols for the position of vice chair, so signify by raising your hand, please.
Just remember, you're doing this to yourself.
I know, we know.
I'm doing it.
So that was a vote of 4. So for those who are in favor of Jim Dorn for vice chair. So Tom, congratulations. You're
Thank you.
in there with me for another year, so.
should already good for a year, shouldn't be.
Now that that is over with, we're onwards to the Henderson Drive update. Andrew.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you
There
for
you are.
letting me
Hi.
be here. How you been? So the Henderson Drive project, as you all know, is currently underway right now. We've had some hiccups along the way, but we're getting there. The project, just a reminder to everybody, this project is a result of NCDOT wanting to resurface Henderson driveway, or Henderson Drive. So before they resurface the roadway, we want to repair all the infrastructure beneath the roadway so that, a year, 2 or 3 from now, we're not tearing up brand new asphalt, which nobody likes to see in the city of Jacksonville. So the utilities that we're replacing right now and repairing are the water, sanitary, and sewer, and the storm sewer. And construction on the project started back in January of this year, and it seems like it's been forever since it started. So the construction limits for this project extend from River Street all the way to Jacksonville High School, just to remind everybody. And it includes the side streets along the way from them limits. So currently, we have completed the sanitary sewer pipe repairs. We've lined all of the sanitary sewer that has any defects in it. So that portion of the work has been done. The work from Doris Avenue to Jacksonville High School has also been completed, and that was storm sewer lining in that section of the roadway. All of the new water line has been installed to date. The contractor is currently working to complete tying in the existing services to the residents along the roadway, and that will be finished up tomorrow. Then we also have about 90% of the trench paving has been completed to date. We still have a little bit more left over with the trench paving where we need to abandon some existing water lines.
Would you tell people what trench paving is, please?
So trench paving is the image that you see here. That's actually what trench paving is. Everywhere we've had to dig up the roadway in order to put in a pipe, there's obviously a trench through the roadway. And then you bring that trench back up to finished grade, and then we need to put asphalt back onto it so that you have a seamless roadway and nobody's driving over the potholes that everybody has been driving over lately. So our next steps with this project are to abandon the existing water line. Once we finish this week with tying in the residents to the new water line, we're looking at starting abandoning the water line next week. Starting on Monday, we'll be sending out notices to the residents along Henderson Drive that'll be affected by the abandonment of the water line. So there will be some more temporary interruptions in the water service as we do this abandonment, and we're trying to strategically place them so that people are without water for as little amount of time as possible. Another remaining portion of the project is the rehab of the existing manholes. There's 23 manholes that need to be rehabbed. All that work is going to be done by trenchless technologies, so we're not having to dig up anything. The only impact we'll have to residents and motorists along the roadway is just a few more traffic cones in the way and having to detour traffic around the work. We also have the paving, obviously, that'll have to be completed once the abandonment of the water line's been completed. And then when we're off the roadway and we're done with this portion of the work, DOT is going to come back in and resurface the roadway. Our last discussions with them, they are looking at repaving the roadway next calendar year. Just the way the timing is worked out with their contracts and getting a contractor in here, that they're trying their best to push it as fast as they can, but that was the last indications that we had from NCDOT.
When you say calendar year, January timeframe?
Probably closer to the springtime of next calendar year.
Okay.
That's just normally how their contracts, DOT's resurfacing contracts work out.
How bad is that roadway going to be between the time that you all finish and they get that thing?
It's actually not going to be
Not
that
too
bad.
bad?
No, ma'am. The trench where we're repaving should be seamless. So there may be a slight bump in the roadway just because it is two different asphalts, but it will not be that bad at all. We're also, with the trench paving, we're having the contractor come back and kind of touch up some of the old patches that have been done over the years to try to get them to ride a little bit better before we turn traffic completely loose on the roadway.
And we did talk to DOT. They're going to continue to maintain the road. So if potholes develop, or if you notice there's a few areas where some potholes have developed or gotten, even worse, a little bit larger because of all the traffic, narrowed into 2 lanes, DOT is going to come back and address those as they need to. So the road will continue to be, it'll look like patchwork, but it will be continued. Yeah, it will be continued
That's my
to
next question.
be maintained until it's completely resurfaced. And the good thing about them being behind us, even though we would prefer not to see them that far behind us, it does give time if the trench settles or other things arise as we've moved people over to new water lines, those kind of things. It does give us a period of time to come back and address those issues before new asphalt goes down. So there is some advantage to letting it sit. And we do have signs out there that talk about the different stages.
We do.
Unfortunately, this stage is just taking longer than we would have liked.
Andrew, the systems that you either upgraded or replaced, what's the life of those supposed to be? The 50-year, 25-year?
I believe it's right around the 50-year mark is what we designed for. And obviously, we are expecting them to last much longer than 50 years. But I believe that is what the design criteria was.
So people will see the equivalent of wooden pipes.
Right,
Kind of like downtown Jacksonville is
Back
finding.
in, 50, 60 years and say, what were we thinking? So, yeah. But
But the material is coated and the design was coated for 50 years, you think?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
And everything's out of the road now, right?
no, everything is actually still within the roadway.
To the side though, right?
Yes.
Wasn't that the idea?
Yes.
The sewer line itself had to maintain, it's all over the place in the roadway, but it's basically in the middle of the roadway. But we did try to push it as far to the outside as we could.
The water line's right along the curb where you see
That's
that
what I thought,
trench.
that
Yes,
it's not in the
we-
middle anymore.
No.
When a new developer builds, where are they putting ours? Same thing down the middle of the road? Is it just because of access, that's where they have to be?
No, what we find is that's a great place to put utilities. And they're not, you can't run water and sewer in the same trench. There are state laws that say there's a minimum of 10 feet of
Oh,
horizontal separation and, where they cross, there's a minimum of 36 inches vertical separation. And you have to change material types. So there are requirements, but, wherever you put the water line, you still have to extend water lines underneath the road to reach residents on both sides. Now, on major roadways like Western Boulevard, we have water lines on both sides of the road. So we handle, creates a better system because you loop the system, more demand, but you also are able to serve people from each side.
so what?
It also needs to be maintained more
Yeah, it does.
and relocate more when there's a project.
Is this project coming in at budget or is it not?
The Henderson Drive project is still within budget.
And how much was it originally budgeted for?
I think our original estimate for the project was right at 1.2 million, and we are still hovering right at that number. We've had a few hiccups along the way because there is so many existing utilities beneath Henderson Drive. We actually found an old roadway where we had to dig up old curb and gutter. So it's caused some challenges along the way, but we're still right there within our budget.
And I asked for the audience on G10.
We actually had to move the water line, if I remember correctly. We had to switch sides because of some of those challenges.
The original, we were supposed to be on the other side of the roadway, and there's an existing duct bank and storm drain that were so close that it just became impossible to put the water line into the ground without disturbing either of those two pipes. So we had made a design change early on in the project to put it to the other side of the roadway.
Quick question, is Gum Ranch going through the same general thing that's going on with Henderson? What's the deal with that?
You want to answer or you want me to?
No, go ahead.
Gum Branch, what they're doing is, right now is mill patching, and they're gonna come back and mill and resurface all of Gum Branch. The infrastructure in Gum Branch in some locations is actually largely outside of the roadway, but the infrastructure that we have in Gum Branch has either been repaired or in pretty good shape. So
Are
we
they
have
thinking
as
they're gonna do
major-
these two paving jobs at the same time?
No, Gum Branch should be, yes, it's all night work. So that's why they went ahead and did the mill patching now, and then they'll come right behind that and,
That
do
should be
the-
done this year then?
yes, within the next few weeks, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's gotten to be very
Yes,
jarring to drive down. And more people are using Gum Branch to avoid Henderson.
that's
The
correct.
traffic on it has gotten really busy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, since no further questions, Deanna, with the NCDOT project update, please.
Thank you, good evening. And I have to say, I have missed presenting to you guys, and so I'm coming back and with a new hat on and no longer in engineering, but now with transportation. And so I know Talia and Andrew and Wally have done a great job in kind of walking you through some of the CIP projects related to DOT. And so I'm gonna come in, we're gonna talk about some of those projects specifically. We're also gonna talk about how did we identify these projects and what's the process look like. So on the transportation side of the house, so we have what's called the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan, which that process is similar to what you use as the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan for the city. So they're very similar. So with the TIP, we identify new projects. And so we identify where that need is either is there a roadway that's congested or mobility issues, et cetera. We submit those projects. We then score those projects based on what the priority is. So we'll look at from a regional, division, and local level. We score those projects. The whole state does this. We put them in the hopper. We prioritize them once they've scored high enough. And through the prioritization process, those projects are then submitted in the approved TIP or the Transportation Improvement Plan. So similarly, like the CIP where they have a 10-year plan, and for the CIP, you're only looking at that first year for funding. For DOT, it's a 10-year plan, and they're looking at the first 6 years for funding. So any project that's within the first 6 years is considered a funded project, and the back 4 years are more of your planning projects. And so this is a cycle that we do every 2 years. It's the same cycle. Like the CIP, you do it annually. We do it every 2 years. And any project that doesn't score high enough that's not in the TIP gets reprioritized with the next cycle. And so the project, we might work on the project now. It might fall off for whatever reason. It kind of gets into a holding pattern, and then it gets back into the hopper with the next cycle. So I just wanted to kind of set the stage of what we use as the TIP, which is similar to the CIP, because that'll be something that we'll be making that correlation through this process.
One question real quick.
Yep.
Do you include the extraterritorial areas of Jacksonville?
Good question. So, and I should have made that statement, so thank you for asking. So in our world, in JUMPO, which is the Jacksonville Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, we are not limited to just the corporate limits of the city of Jacksonville. Our limits exceed outside of that. We have parts in Sneads Ferry and out into the county as well. And I'll show you a resource that you can actually better define what that area looks like. So we're looking at it from a more regional connectivity and not just specifically limited to the city of Jacksonville. So thank you for bringing that up. So as we identify the project need, the important thing to take away is that this is a coordinated effort between both NCDOT and the city of Jacksonville. So we've identified the need, and once we identify that need, we are working with them through, we typically ask them to partner with us through the design and construction of any utility complex that might arise. And so why do we do that? We do that because if we were going to go in and relocate existing utilities, we would have to kind of see in the future as to what this concept of what they're planning to do, where can we put these lines that are not going to be in conflict whenever they decide what the design is. And so the problem with that is that we'd have to be a year out in front of them with the design, permitting, and construction, and they might not even have a finalized design, or their design might change. And so we have found it's actually in our best interest, as well as theirs, to partner with them. And so with that, we typically enter into agreements to kind of solidify that arrangement. So we have the need, we submitted the letter saying we would like to partner with you, and that just is a written acknowledgement of the coordination that's going to happen. So we get the concept. So the concept is, why are we doing this project? So we're looking at the project and we said, this particular project, the whole point of this is we need to widen the road. And so I equated the concept as lines on a piece of paper. This is too early for us to know what that potential utility conflict might be. It's just, will this work? just from a purely conceptual standpoint. And then from that, we get our first really high-level opinion of cost, which is similar to what you do with a CIP project. We look at that need and we say, well, based on bid estimates and what we think the project's gonna cost, this is the high dollar number. And that's what we do here. So the project limit might be astronomical, and that project cost from NCDOT starts really high because we don't have that specific information. But we want to know from a planning and budgeting standpoint, what's coming down the pipeline? How much is this going to impact the city? So that's our first rough number of estimate. So from the concept, we move through the design phase. And the design phase is similar but different when you do utility projects. So again, they're more focused on the roadway projects. So they're wanting to know, will the road work? Will the width of the road, the median, the shoulders, the off-ramps, what does that look like? And so they have to go through a lot of environmental and design to get that concept kind of more delineated. And then once that's done, then we start really paying attention to where that utility conflicts are. But throughout this entire design process that could last years, the city of Jacksonville is at the table having those discussions. And we're saying, could you move the road over a little bit? We think, we've got a utility line in that area. It's going to be an impact. So we're working through them at every single phase of this project. So once we're towards the end of design, we have our second opportunity to refine our estimate when we enter into an agreement again. And this is based on the engineer's estimate. And that tends to be much lower than that initial concept because now we actually know what that project cost is going to be or what we think it's going to be. So from design, we then moved into construction and we get our third estimate, and that's through the actual bid prices. And so that's good and bad. So, and you'll see, we'll talk about one in a minute, but you'll have another project where the price might come in. This is actual bid prices. We enter into another agreement. And then through the construction process, our city staff is right there with NCDOT working through that project, any conflicts, et cetera. So we're right there throughout the entire process. And then at the end of construction, when they're done, the city is responsible for the actual cost of what was installed with that project. And so we might have that last change order that signifies the final amount for that particular project. So as you can see, it's a very in-depth process going from when the project need all the way through your conceptual design and construction. Does anyone have any questions before I move on? It was kind of a lot. Yes, sir. I knew you were going to have a question.
I got two really, and,
Okay.
and one is the partnership with the state and the city is mostly because there are state roads running through the city?
Yes.
Okay.
So the main road, so if it's state maintained, the state's responsible for everything. But as Wally had pointed out, a lot of the roads have our utilities in the road. And we're actually going to talk about some of that in the next few slides. So,
And it's not because they butt up someplace, the city in this, it's because their roads are in, as I understand what you just said. So is there any partnership with Onslow County about this?
so Onslow County is not responsible for maintaining any roads. So the roads within the county are either private, or they're maintained by the state of North Carolina, or they're maintained by a jurisdiction. So in this case, it would be the city of Jacksonville.
That's all over the state, right? There are no county roads in the state of North Carolina.
I can't say that for sure.
That's
I
what
know
I
in
have
this
read
area,
somewhere. There
that's
just
true.
isn't any.
Yeah, I can't speak for somewhere like Mecklenburg or
Yeah.
somewhere like that.
Yeah, that's dual, yeah. Are you calling it regional because of like where the water lines come in out along Gum Branch and stuff? So it's things that are outside of the city that could be affected too?
Yes, and so my role is helping coordinate between the city of Jacksonville and NCDOT with utility relocations. And I'll answer some of those questions on the next couple of slides when we talk about what the law says. I did want to point out though, when I know Talia had brought up that throughout the present CIP that got adopted, you saw the prices come down substantially. And so one of the reasons that we found out in prior projects with DOT, they were assessing a betterment cost. And that betterment cost was some direct and indirect costs that they advised us to budget at 20%. And so we applied that methodology to all of these projects, but we within the last few months have received word that that does not apply to these utility contracts or these projects. And so therefore, we were able to take that cost off. Another thing I wanted to point out that we typically, before, and this is a relatively new process for all of us, when the CIP is put together, you normally figure out what your construction estimate is, and then you apply, 10 to 15% design cost just as a budgeting. So we applied that same concept here. And in reality, DOT is paying the majority of the engineering costs, and so our cost for them to design the utility work is minimal. And so that is a cost savings for us as far as design. So I just wanted to point that out because I know that you guys were a little concerned as the rest of us when the prices were kind of fluctuating so much of, where are we at? And so as you can see from this diagram, we try our best of trying to get updated estimates, but the projects just last for such a long time. The important thing is we're trying to get the money in there so that everyone's aware that this potential project is coming. So now that we talked about coordination, let's talk about what the law says. So the law says that NCDOT pays 100% of the cost for municipalities who have a population of less than 10,000, any nonprofit corporation, water and sewer authorities, rural county systems, and pre-existing rights. So what is that? That means that I have to prove that I was there before DOT. And by I mean the city of Jacksonville in this case. And that means either through an easement or I've owned the land, something that shows I was there before DOT. And if I can prove all that, then DOT pays 100% of that cost. Now, if for municipalities, though, the law says something different. If for municipalities that have 10 to 25,000 is 25%, 25 to 50 is 50%, and over 50,000 is 100% payment. Well, the city of Jacksonville currently falls within that threshold. And so that's why all of these projects, we are being asked to pay 100%. And so
You say 100%, you mean?
100% of the cost to relocate utilities.
Yes, not for the road work.
No. And so, quite frankly, when we started talking about all these projects and we're developing what the CIP looks like and the financial impact, we were kind of taken aback saying, wow, this doesn't really seem fair. And so we really started doing some research. We looked at other municipalities and towns or municipalities that had this same population because we said, okay, well, what are they doing? How are they paying for all of this? What do they know that maybe we don't know? And we weren't very successful in finding that what we really wanted was that aha moment. And so then we started looking at it, well, let's look at it from a ratepayer standpoint. And as we all know, the Camp Lejeune is included with our population, but as you all know, they don't pay they're not ratepayers. And so as of recently, as of June, we had 18,000 ratepayers that would be expected to pay, roughly $1 million of infrastructure that was, and we're like, this just doesn't seem fair. And so we looked at other municipalities that with their ratepayers, and when you look at our population without ratepayers, it was just completely lopsided. And so with that, we felt like we had justification to kind of pursue something. And so with the support of some delegation, we suggested if we could possibly amend the law that maybe we change that 50% payment to go from 50,000 to 100,000. And so that law is actually, or that proposed law change is under consideration now, and that if we are successful in getting that changed, our financial impact would be cut in half. So that is a very positive thing, and so we'll keep you up to date as far as it moves through all the various houses and for approval, et cetera. But that was something that we're very excited if it actually comes to fruition.
Was that more reasonable than going back and asking them to use your ratepayer, or that any municipality like where the Air Force is would?
Well, we looked at Fayetteville, and Fayetteville has an authority. And so as the previous slide, if you're a water and sewer authority, you don't pay anything. So here in Wausau, if they have any conflicts, they don't pay it's $0 to them. If it's a private system that's owned and a DOT project is impacted and you can't prove prior rights, you have to pay 100% of that cost, that private company.
But it wasn't considered that you could get the legislation to consider extracting out the Marine Corps the New River
Well,
Camp Lejeune
We didn't,
population?
honestly, we knew that all these, I mean, if you look at the time frame of what the biggest projects that are gonna be affecting the city of Jacksonville financially is now, like within the next year or so. And so we felt that changing the population from 50,000 to 100,000 would be the easiest, because when you look at who does this impact, I think there's us and another town, and that's it. So we didn't feel like we thought that this was gonna be the easiest lift, just to change that number. It's very minor impact for others, and this would get us at least through this first initial hump. And then if we need to maybe go in and maybe consider some other language changes, that's something we could address at a later date.
So you said you thought just one other. I can think of the Air Force base and the Marine Corps Air Station as two other towns that have military population that would make their numbers go up.
Goldsboro, Seymour Johnson, yeah.
Yep, we did, that was one that we looked at, but I know Fayetteville has an authority, and I think Goldsboro had an authority. And so they weren't in the same situation it's been a couple of months, but from what I can recall, no one had that situation like we did, because they all had an authority.
I know as of recently as 5 years ago that the Marine Corps is looking to expand the number of people at the base. That's why I asked. If they go up and get what they want, they're gonna have a much larger Marine Corps. And if they do, then you'll have a much larger population here. And,
You'll undo what they just did.
right.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked that, but I understand that you're looking at a resolution that solves the problem today.
Yes, yep. So this might be something to consider at a later date too.
Hear that,
to your
Randy?
point. So before we talk about some of the projects and kind of the different phases that they're in, I wanted to point out we have an excellent resource. It's our the NCDOT.org. It's our website, and it gives you a great opportunity to dive into the project specifically. And so one of the newest features that we've added is this interactive project map. And what you do is you click on it. I would say that you make sure that you have the box to the left that says transportation projects. Make sure that little box is checked. And we've overlaid NCDOT CAD files, their design plans, as that we have today. We overlaid it with Google Maps. And so you can zoom in and look at particular projects. You can look at it from a large scale of what potential either impacts to you personally, to your neighbors, to an area. And again, this is something just to kind of get the conversation started. What's shown, each project, they're in different phases. We also provide a tentative timeline of when we're going to be finished with design and starting construction. So if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, but this would be something that you can kind of dive in at your leisure. So we're going to talk about a couple of different projects that are in various stages. And so this one is Western and Gum Branch. So Western is north and south, and Gum Branch is east and west. So this project is currently under construction now, and this is limited to an intersection improvement. And so what we're doing is we're just adding some turn lanes, and we're adding a median on what's shown in yellow there. So this project initially started off through the design phase where engineering identified when they are doing the utility relocations, we're going to potentially put out the shopping center and some residential homes, and said we need to do something now. And so DOT and City of Jacksonville worked together, and we actually did a small project before all of this. Did we put in a valve? We put in a valve so they could isolate it when they were doing this work, which saved the shopping center and some residential homes from going without water. So that's just one example of how that we coordinated our efforts of what can we do to kind of minimize the impact. Additionally, we were able to prove prior rights on this project, so we were able to reduce our cost, especially along the infrastructure along Gum Branch to the right of the screen. In front of Lowe's Foods, we had an easement there, so we didn't have to pay for any of that. So this particular project is limited to the impacts, some 350 linear feet of 12-inch water line and 150 feet of 16-inch water line, and that's predominantly on the top left side. So let's see. This initial cost was at $57,000. This project was led somewhat after Hurricane Florence, and where you have contractors are already super busy. They had one bid, they had to re-advertise, they got the same bidder back. And unfortunately, in this case, because we don't have much say-so in this, DOT is the driver of the project. So our utility costs went from $57,000 to $244,000 for this project. And unfortunately, we don't have much say-so in that. So this is one instance where we're gonna have to come in and increase the project budget as a result of that increased cost. But this project is currently under construction. We're expecting it to be done in the next couple of months, so I'm sure you've seen some work out there already.
And to give you some rest of the story,
Yeah.
The valve that was installed about a year ago unfortunately did not hold. So the first night that we went out and tried to isolate the area, we ended up inadvertently taking Williamsburg Plantation, Lauderdale, and Rock Creek out of water. And it wasn't for a long period of time, but it was several hours. The important thing there is we never cut into a pipe. We didn't have there was rumors circulating around that we broke some pipe, those kind of things. It wasn't that, it's literally we couldn't get that valve to operate correctly. In addition, we had a valve upstream of this that should have been supplying water that was closed that we were unable to find. So we had to abandon the water line work that evening and restore water. Again, that did unfortunately take a couple of hours. So the next night we attempted to, again, isolate the area. And while we did not take anybody out of water for an extended period of time, I think Rock Creek may have been out of water for, a half an hour to an hour at the most. And again, this is late at night, we're talking 10, 11, midnight. We were, again, unable to isolate that line. And, part of the challenge there is while you do have those residential communities, you would not believe the amount of business that McDonald's does at midnight, 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. I'm serious. I would have not. I never saw the drive-through without at least 2 or 3 cars in it. Never. The entire. We were there 4 nights. Staff. We had the contractor worked really well with us. As a staff, we met and figured out what to do to keep the shopping center. And through some creativity and a lot of work on Anthony's part, we actually were able to shut the shopping center down and tie it into Williamsburg Plantation through fire hydrants from the backside and keep this shopping center in operation. So that when we made the adjustments in the 16-inch water main, we only had maybe 10 or 15 houses that didn't have water in the Lauderdale area. And of course, we advertised this and put it out. But the first night, we were not expecting an outage. We were just expecting some lower pressure because we were cutting out one of the looped feeds. But we have it now. Unfortunately, we still have some work to do on the right-hand side of Gum Branch there where that right-hand arrow is. We have some 16-inch water main that we still have to remove, but we don't anticipate any outages. But we do apologize to Williamsburg Plantation and Rock Creek and Lauderdale that first evening. And for what it's worth, I live in that area. So when I turned on my faucet and the water didn't come on, I knew there was a problem.
So Wally, did you replace that valve or change how, so that in the future you can isolate it?
So the valve was called an inserter valve. And the reason it's called that is because you insert the valve without ever taking the line out of service. So there's constant pressure on it. We think what happened is either through pressure or installation or something, that the valve just didn't seat properly because it did slow the water, it did reduce the pressure, but it didn't, take it down enough to where we could make any changes in the line. So we will, I don't know what the warranty is on those, but we will be contacting the installer to discuss options. And from what I understand, there may be a way to actually, now that the housing's in place, actually take the insides out and replace them. But while we were doing the work, we went ahead and installed a new valve. So, because, at that point we did have the line isolated. So we went ahead and installed a new valve. So, while it is important to go back and take care of that situation, we actually have another valve now that we can control also.
Same kind of valve?
No. This is a regular, just 16-inch gate valve. And I think one thing that I would like to share, because my wife, I like to use her as an example. My wife's like, well, why don't you just turn the valves back on? And I think one of the important things to share is that when you turn a valve, it is literally 3 times the diameter of the pipe plus 3 to shut it down and turn it back on. And in some of these cases, the valves that we're shutting off, it literally takes 2 people turning the wrench. And, somebody wants to do 16 times 3 plus 3. And we ended up turning 9 valves, 8 valves, something like that. It takes time, to close a 16-inch valve. If you're turning it the whole time, it takes somewhere between 15 minutes and a half an hour, depending on how hard that valve is to turn. So it's not like we, I think my wife was picturing the walk over, we flip a switch, or we go out to
When
the
you do the hose
spigot.
in the yard.
That's right.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking a wrench that's sticking, 6-8 feet in the ground, standing up, and a guy on each side walking around in a circle. And so, I do want to share that, the first night, even though we took people out, once we realized it and immediately turned around and started trying to undo some of the things we had done, it just takes time. So that's why it took, some people were out of water for 2 hours, but by the time you turn all of those valves, it just takes time to put them back in. So we apologize, but I did want to take that opportunity to share some of the things that happened.
Thank you.
All right, so moving along is the Gum Branch widening project. So this project, the limits are from Somerset Road to east of Richlands. It's about a 3-mile project limit. And this project is just widening the road to add a 4-foot shoulder. And 2 feet of that will be paved on either side. We're also installing a signal at Cowhorn and Gum Branch. And we're installing some turn lanes to assist motorists getting in and out of subdivisions. And so this is the first phase of a much larger long-term project where we would like to widen Gum Branch Road. And that is in our long-term planning document. So even though the project limits are 3 miles, that we've been working, city staff's been working with NCDOT to limit that potential utility conflict. So out here we just have a water line. So you'll see that we only are impacting about 500 linear feet. And that is limited to just crossings, like driveway crossings. And so we're working with just small sections of repairs, not a wholesale moving the water line. And so this project is probably the next one that in the area will start to see. I know they experienced some delays, but I think that we're talking about the potential of starting construction. And I want to say it was like middle of next year. So you'll start seeing some work out here. And by the way, that's not Gum Branch, that picture. That was just to show you what the shoulder would look like. Full disclosure.
And that, I will say that section of water line that runs down Gum Branch is the same that we were just working on. So we do know how to isolate that section. So there is good news there.
Good point. So the next project is Western Access Management, and I know you've seen this picture many times, but this project is a safety project, and believe it or not, that's how this started out. this particular project is limited to Western Boulevard from 17 to 24. And so with this project, we're actually adding a median. And so it'll be some turn lanes will be at the signal, or it'll be at median breaks. So rather than having a free-for-all with everyone just kind of competing, turning, that we're going to be forcing those left-hand turns in specific areas. And as Wally mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of infrastructure on Western Boulevard because it's on both sides. We've got water lines on both sides. We've got a sewer main and a sewer gravity on one side. And so with this project, they are widening it a little bit. And so we are going to be impacted with our utilities. When you have a project that's this large, there are areas of opportunity. I mentioned before where the design cost is much smaller. Construction could be more cost benefit because we're only paying for the utility and not the traffic control and everything that goes with that on a project of this nature. When we started looking at the infrastructure along Western Boulevard, and looking at how old it is and the materials of construction, we really saw an opportunity because we felt strongly that once DOT puts the road back, and as Andrew mentioned, new asphalt, you don't want to cut it. And we felt that because of the materials at the end of its life, that might happen. And so we really saw this as an opportunity to maximize our cost benefit analysis with having to go ahead and replace some of the water line and some of the sewer. And so the project, as you can see, has quite a lot of quantities for the water main and some sewer. And we are continuing to work with NCDOT to refine that impact. We are having to wholesale relocate some of the sewer, but DOT's been great in that even though we're relocating it, that we're able to put the majority of this relocation within their utility easement, so we don't have to purchase an easement. And so
They'll let you do that.
yes, and so that's a cost savings for us because we don't have to actually buy easements. Now, full disclosure, there's I think 9 parcels that we do have to procure easements, and we're working through that process. And that cost is not part of the initial estimate that was shown. And so we're still, even though they're out for right-of-way now, DOT's purchasing property, we're still negotiating where the utilities go within the right-of-way limits. And so we're not there yet. But our plan is, as you can see in the picture, we're gonna come back with the beautifully landscaped medians. It won't exactly
where do all
look
those
like
trees
that.
come from in the?
It's not, it's just an artist's rendering, but yes, our plan is to come back with some landscaping. And recently DOT changed their policy, and so the landscaping is now part of their project. We used to come in as a city normally 1 to 2 years after and actually install the landscaping. They've changed that, now they're going to do it. So
nice.
we get to work with our parks division that meets their requirements, and so we get to pick the materials. And just like we do with the utilities, we'll have Jason Smith, our horticulturist, will be there kind of overseeing the installation as well of the landscaping.
I'm assuming this is gonna look much like the Huff extension when it's done?
Yes.
That medium that runs
Yes.
from.
Question, it's a lovely diagram and I noticed no overhead power lines. Is anything gonna be done about the ones that run between 24 and 17? Well, all of this widening stuff is going on.
That they're all remaining as they are. And that in part is Jones on.
Your artist forgot that part, huh?
I know, well. That's
This isn't a rendition, this is a dream here.
Good point. But yeah, they, all of their lines are within an easement, and we have looked at just taking small sections and putting them underground, and it is not on here, but on more city-owned roads, and they are extremely expensive. So,
Hurricanes love to knock them around though.
oh yes.
Now, you said this is really based on a safety issue, is
It
how
was,
this project
yeah,
got going?
When this project first got identified as that need, it was one of the higher incidents of crashes.
Right.
And so that's why the project started. And as I mentioned, once you go from a project need to the concept through design, the larger the project, the longer it takes. And so this project, I think, has been under, from concept through design, 2 years, maybe 3 years. And so things change as some of those other projects like Huff Drive and all that gets installed. It kind of changes a little bit of the need, but the need's still here if you look at what the end result's going to be as far as trying to ensure a better, safer
You're gonna
roadway.
get rid of that middle turning lane, that,
Yes, where it's a free-for-all now,
yes,
that's what I call it.
the suicide lane as they refer to it, yes. Yes, that's what this is
That-
gonna
that one,
take care
yes.
of.
Yes.
Well, my follow-up on that, being you're looking at, is there any avenues for funding to help support this through the state or anything because of safety concerns? Is there any possibility of that?
You mean for the utility costs?
Well,
Or-
just for the cost of the whole project,
Yeah,
anything?
yeah, DOT's paying, this is a DOT project, so.
Okay, so
yeah.
it's not a city of Jacksonville
No,
project?
we coordinated,
Okay.
it's DOT's is, the roadway safety project is a DOT project. So they are paying for the widening of the road, the paving of the road, and all the coordination. What we're doing with the city is taking the opportunity to replace some of that infrastructure and then working with them to relocate existing infrastructure. The relocation of the utilities is at our cost, everything else is at DOT's cost.
It's gonna look like the upper end of Western does now, where all the stores are. It'll all be divided with intersections and turn lanes and all.
Yes.
Okay.
And I do want to mention that sometimes when DOT is working on projects, that those needs come at different times. And so this project's been one that, as I mentioned, we've been working on, and we're all very familiar with the stormwater issue that we have at Western and 24. So, and we also have an intersection improvement identified at Western and Marine. And so DOT is designing them as 3 separate projects, but the intent is to actually construct them as one. So it'll be one contractor with that way they have the flexibility of kind of setting up their own schedule and coordination. You really don't want 3 contractors out there trying to coordinate all three big projects.
When DOT does actually get started, is it gonna be similar to Piney Green where it took several years from one end
Yes.
to the other?
Unfortunately, the answer is yes. And that's because it's not just paving a road. I mean, at this point, similar to Henderson, where you've got to go in and you've got to, install the new infrastructure, you have to tie everything over, then you've got to remove the infrastructure or leave it in place. They have stormwater drainage that they have got to install, new curb and paving. And so it's not going to be fun, but we just have to keep our eye on the prize that at the end, we'll have a much safer and a better, greater flexibility in navigating through Jacksonville, not just with this particular project, but all the projects that DOT is bringing to Onslow County.
Are they planning, do you know, to do this at night, so
Oh,
those
yes.
businesses
Oh,
are
yes, this will
not?
be a night.
Because this is gonna be, hundreds of businesses are gonna
Yes.
be affected by this.
I see them it'll be a majority of night work, and I'm sure there'll be some day work, but DOT has restrictions for contractors that work on their roadway, and it's all based on how busy the road is. And so I would imagine that this project would be all at night, which obviously, well, it takes us longer because it's at night, because you're limited to personnel and et cetera. So, but I think majority will be at night.
Wally, a question that's not directly related to what we're talking about, but is conjecture to it, and that is, I'm asking it because it would be a cost savings. At one time, the city talked about having a backbone for internet, and I assume that would become a utility issue, and as such, there would be something about putting the utility in, and is that being thought of at these times when you'll have the road tore up that you might?
Well, we currently have fiber that runs down, city-owned fiber that runs down Western Boulevard. And I do sit on a group that looks at the placement of citywide fiber and how we serve, this wouldn't be for residents, but how we serve, governmental uses like the traffic signal, the water plant, our water tanks, the pump stations, the wells. And one of the things that was identified with this project is that while there is fiber there, it's not large enough. We need, the fiber is done in strands, number of strands. And what we have there is not large enough. So we will be putting in larger fiber, from what I understand, as part of this project.
So there is a.
But it is overhead.
Right now it's limited to government use, even
Correct.
though the conversation the last couple of years has been citywide for schools, libraries, and residential.
And we do have partnerships with, Onslow County, with some of the schools, and we just, I know that council, although I wasn't part of the discussion, council did authorize a partnership with Jones Onslow. So we do have partnerships that use our fiber, which is part of the need for larger fiber down Western Boulevard.
Yeah, and my question is, in all these plans, that utility is also being considered besides
That's
water and
correct.
sewer as
That's
far
correct.
as.
And not just with the fiber, but we also look at sidewalk connectivity,
Yes.
pedestrian improvements like ped heads, crosswalks. And so,
Handicap
and
improvements.
yeah, all that comes from the design perspective, that comes towards the back end of the design. So again, they focus more on the roadway and then utilities, and then it's all those betterment costs. But yeah, and so you'll see at Western and Gum Branch, we're adding pedestrian improvements there, so ped heads, crosswalks, and we're also changing out the signals to black powder coated mast arms. So those are some betterments that we decided as a city to pursue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the last project, this is the NC 258-53 interchange. This is an example of what it would look like if you clicked on the interactive map and this is not the whole project. I just kind of zoomed into what everyone tends to talk about. So it's a little busy, and so in blue is the design for NCDOT projects, and so what's kind of running Jacksonville bypass, the bypass is going to be going over 53. So if you can kind of see that movement, and then with that, we're installing a new light in front of Walgreens. There's going to be another new light off of Prophet Lane, which is by the Exxon and the Bouncing Betty's Tattoo and Piercing. We're also, because this is going to be an interchange, there's controlled access, and so you'll see that we're also constructing a new access road on the very top of your screen. And that allows the apartments, access from the apartments and all those homes, that road connects to Yop Road. And so this project's scope is very large. It goes from Yop Road all the way out. I think this one ends at Blue Creek. And then the next project that's going to be coupled with this is the 258 access management. And that goes to Super Street from 258 all the way to Burton Park.
What looks like it goes straight through Piggly Wiggly?
Yes.
It's a roadway.
That's the roadway?
Yes. So this allows you to
What
kind
does
of,
that connect up there?
there are homes
Behind it.
that's not shown on the map, but there's homes
And how do
back
they
there.
access
So
now?
there's homes behind Piggly Wiggly,
Yeah.
and you see that old Christ Lane,
Yeah.
that's the road they use now. That road is no more when you construct this because of the controlled access. So everyone will be accessing it through that new road that's being constructed.
The good thing is this also opens up new developable property. There are some advantages to this road.
This project it was really too large for me to kind of go out anymore, but this is a great example for you to go to our website. The website has that project and many more. It also allows you to look to see if your street is maintained by the city or by NCDOT. At the very bottom of our homepage, you can report street lighting that might be out, and also can report potholes. So for both the city and through DOT.
Can you report the lousy paving jobs that's been done by the city in a certain part of the city?
You can talk to Andrew.
Well, that must
We've
hurt.
got one, we've got the one in front of the church right over there. Y'all can't seem to get right. They've been over there 4 times now.
Yes, we're
That's
having
not
issues
good.
with the
Thank you.
infrastructure there.
No, no.
That's actually just a maintenance activity.
Well, it's like a weekly one, it
It
seems.
is, we have yet to solve that one,
Job
unfortunately.
security.
Yeah, but I mean, you keep seeing going over and They keep going over there and it keeps being terrible every time you drive over it.
Yes. That one's continuing to sink. That's part of the challenge.
That's, well, let's hope it's not a big sinkhole, doesn't take church with it in the United Way, you know?
This ain't Florida.
So that concludes my update, and as always, if you have any questions, you can reach out, give us a call, shoot us an email.
Will you come back, please?
Of course, anytime, you just let me know.
On the one that you were just at,
Yep.
with all of the lovely blue lines.
Yes.
What is the time schedule, tentative time schedule for this to begin?
So we are, out of all 4 projects, this is still under like an early, not, I would say a mid halfway design. The project itself is very complicated. The roadway part, I would say they're pretty solid on. It's all the infrastructure that's going to be impacted. So the infrastructure, it's not just the city of Jacksonville, those on Wausau, and there's a private sewer system that's going to be impacted. And so all of that has to be coordinated with NCDOT. I believe, and my gut is that they're not ready, like the schedule that they have provided, which is the construction supposed to start in '21. I don't see that happening. I see that that's going to end up being pushed out. And I would say that, as I mentioned at the beginning, all of the projects that I talked about are in what's the current TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan. The new TIP was released as a draft, but it got postponed, and it's supposed to be approved this September. With that, some of these projects are going to change. Some of them are, the construction of them are going to be pushed out, probably to be a little bit more realistic than what we've anticipated, like I just said on this one. And so all of the timelines are subject to change, and we'll know a little bit more in September.
So those properties that are going to have roads over them has any right-of-ways, buyouts, anything been done on those? Or that's still all out there somewhere?
So I believe on this particular project, for this section, I think they've already started right-of-way acquisition. And so right-of-way acquisition, the best way to explain it is DOT has established what the maximum width of an impact's going to be for the road. They have not necessarily figured out how to deconflict all the utility conflicts. So they have to do that so they can kind of run it concurrently, because if they waited to the final design, something will change, and then this project alone for right-of-way is going to take them over a year. So I believe they're in right-of-way, and they will continue through that right-of-way process. And typically what happens, DOT, when they are talking about property acquisition, it's all mandated by federal law. There's a specific process that they go by. And when people ask me, well, I don't know what to do, and I said, well, you need to ask questions, understand why they need it, what they're taking, and if you feel like you don't understand or that you're not getting the value that you think, then you need to do your due diligence. So contact a lawyer, contact other people, but that is between the property owner and NCDOT.
And you said before that 53 is going to go over 258?
No, 258 goes over 53. Yeah.
So as they do, so the existing bypass
Goes over.
is going to go over, because 258 actually comes in across the top. So there's a lot of traffic that goes through
Yes.
that intersection right
We have
now.
not seen a traffic plan yet.
Okay.
Again, we're still although we're in right-of-way, some of those nuances we have somewhat talked about, but we haven't got into the details. So, and that'll be part of it. You might see that, and I'm just throwing that out there, so don't quote me, but it might be that they build the on and off ramps for the bypass, and they might say, and it might not be that's the end all be all, this is your temporary, and that temporary might be a year and a half long while they build the overpass. So this is going to be another Pine and Green project where we're just gonna have to be patient as the contractors and NCDOT construct the project, but we have to look at the end result. The end result is gonna make this a much easier intersection. I don't know, for those of you who may or may not live out this way, I do. This intersection is already congested, significantly congested, especially during your peak hours. And we're doing the best that we can to manage it through the traffic signal, but there are times where you're just waiting for that accident to happen.
Especially people trying to turn onto 258 off of 24.
Yes.
You know, the thing is, it's funny, they're working like crazy on Gum Branch and they're working on this. But for so long, they have talked about a third road out to 24 and they keep saying they can't because of the river. And this is getting so bottlenecked.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up. So one project, we call it the 111 extension. And so way back when we talked about having Western Extension was going to be Western Extension to connect you over to Burton Park, and that would be the connection.
Right.
And so we did look at that project, and because of where we wanted to cross, the river was so wide, it was just financially impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And so although that project has fallen off of the tip, DOT has committed to work through what we call the merger process, which is the environmental review. And so we are working through that right now. So there is a connection. It's just not going to be at Western Extension.
Is this going to be near 111? Is that
Yes.
where the current one is?
So the thought now is, and this is just like right now, a line in a map per se, is we're going to extend 111 to Gum Branch. And we're not quite sure, there's I think 3 alternatives that they're still going through all that process, but one of them is a complete new alignment, meaning a brand new road. One of them is talking about using Roadstown Road and doing that and making a couple of changes. But our long-term goal of what we're trying to achieve is that you can go from the airport to 111, all the way to Gum Branch, to right to Ramsey. Then you take Ramsey and go all the way around Ramsey, and our future plans have that to be improved on as well, all the way to 17. That's one like outer loop connectivity that we're trying to do with our
Yeah, because
long-term
it's
plan.
just, they keep doing stuff like this, but you need more roads out there.
Yes.
That's all there is to it. The hurricane, when 40 went out and everybody coming back here and coming to Wilmington had to come down 258, it was a disaster.
Well, another thing that we're working on through transportation is we developed the Transportation Resiliency Action Committee, what we call TRAC, and we have all of our stakeholders at the table looking at exactly what that is. Where's those natural areas of, connectivity, regional mobility, and looking at it, how do you get from not just within our county, but through our county for natural disasters. And so we're looking at that coupled with future projects. That's helping us identify what roads do we need to improve, not the whole road, but where are the areas of failure that we might need to improve. And so we have a great idea. We know where we are and we know where we want to go. And so right now we're just working through how do we develop, because we want a model. We want something that we can plug in and that we can update as projects get constructed. How do we identify new projects? And so that is something we are working on. And the state is extremely supportive of this project. The state's doing some great things too with resiliency. And you also see as a result of the hurricane, another initiative that NCDOT, and it's called MVPS. What is it? It is Mobility Vacationers. I can't remember what the P is.
I don't either.
But anyway, it is, we looked at all of the different types of individuals that come into our area. And we said, how do we encourage economic drivers, that mobility? So they're looking at the interstate status for 24, 258 from Jacksonville to Fayetteville. And so that is something that it's currently under a feasibility study right now.
You mean from 95?
Yeah, from Fayetteville, yeah, yes.
We don't really care about going to Fayetteville, but if you
But
had a way to get
it's-
from 95,
Yeah,
that
from
might not be bad.
95 in that area all
Yeah.
the way over. And so, but they're looking at what do we need to do to get to what projects, is it feasible? And if it is, what was a rough estimate? And so they've got that long-term plan that they're working on now as far as in getting buy-in. So we are working on improving connectivity. It's a long process.
Looks like it.
Hey, Wally,
correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like to make the statement that I think this was important, and it's important for people to realize that we're looking at projects that will be in the majority paid for by the state through DOT. And that part that has to be picked up here is going to be paid by the water and sewer fund and not our general taxes. And that's why it's important that we get this brief and that she provided to us those cost savings that she could identify to us so that we realize there's less pressure on the rate because of this construction. And that it's not the water and sewer's got to do these things, but it's the right time to do it because the road will be done and state's paying for the road and paying some of our cost of design and construction. So again, from this board and the public's perspective, there's no general property tax involvement here. It's water and sewer fund, which is paid for by our water and sewer rates. And if we keep the costs down, then the rates don't go up.
Correct.
Okay then, we're on to old business. Does anybody have any old business to present to the board? Hearing none. New business. And Wally, I think you said you had
I
some.
have two things, actually. First, I'm gonna let Anthony talk about some testing we did over the last few days, I guess. These are brand new photos, so I think he did this over the last 3 days. So that's forward and the others backwards.
I read about that in the newspaper, what's going to be going on.
So over the past week, we've been doing smoke testing in the North Woods area, mainly towards the Decatur lift station basin area. And what we have here is a crew, and this is a fluid smoke machine. It's nothing more than a blower with a lawnmower engine on it. That's what it is,
And you pay how much for that?
It's pretty economical. But you pump liquid into the blower, to the motor, and it heats it and creates smoke or a non-toxic mist. And it helps to locate damaged infrastructure. We're trying to prevent inflow and infiltration, so we're trying to prevent stormwater runoff into the sewer system and groundwater intruding into the collection system. That, you know, that extra water is extra treatment, which is extra money. So this is what we're doing here. Then you got behind the red tube is what's called a rain shield. And you put that into the manhole, and that helps to prevent some of the stormwater runoff as well into the sewer collection system. This is smoke coming out of a vent stack of a home. This is normal. If you live in the Northwoods area and there's smoke coming into your home, you got a problem. You need to contact a plumber to come check it out because you could have a serious problem. But this is normal, so there's no reason to freak out about smoke coming out of the vent stack. This is smoke coming out of a possible clean out that has been damaged, or it could be missing a cap. This is that same photo, and this is how our guys are taking pictures so we can go back and fix any of these problems, because it's going to be a time-consuming process. We're finding a lot of issues. And this is the website that was recently created. And for our viewers, if they want to know anything else about smoke testing, they can go to Jacksonville, NCDOT.gov/smoke testing.
And I apologize, Deanna was smart. She put hers in big bold letters at the bottom. We weren't ready for advertising, so, but Anthony got it right. Jacksonville, NC.gov/smoke testing.
So Anthony, you're saying you found quite a few while you were out there?
Yes, ma'am. There's a lot of, Northwoods is aging. The infrastructure is a lot of clay pipe, a lot of cast iron services. So there's a lot of issues in the area.
Are you doing it in other neighborhoods too?
The future plan is to, yes, but we're mainly concentrating on Northwoods right now.
Did anybody call to say that they did have smoke come into their house?
Surprisingly, I received no phone calls.
Do you do it during the day?
We do it during the day.
Does it dissipate?
It does, yeah.
They may never know if they're at
If they're
work.
not home, yeah.
Yeah.
They'll.
Okay.
We started here because Talia's actually been working on one of the lift station, actually looking at abandoning the Decatur lift station and replacing it with gravity sewer. But as she was doing her initial design work, she realized that flow coming into that station was much larger than what it should have been for the built-out area. So it gave us an area to go focus and look for issues. And I do have one other thing under new business. I would like to introduce Jason Miles, who is our new senior civil engineer. He comes to us by way of both consulting world, and he has experience with municipalities. And I jokingly said that he was going to have to do his own introduction so that you would have an opportunity to meet him, and Talia back there is going to start the slow clap at the end. But I will give Jason an opportunity to tell you a little bit about himself, and he has some interesting experience. So with that, Jason.
Thank you. So I've been in consulting work for 20 plus years. As a civil engineer, graduated from Virginia Tech. I'm from Richmond, Virginia originally.
Fellow Hokie.
Right, absolutely. So I started out my career in construction management at Richmond Airport when they were doing a big expansion program there. Went into design work in the early 2000s. I've been in design work virtually since then, other than a few years I've spent as municipal engineer up in Alaska. Went up there for a couple of years and then also worked for a small town in Alaska that's above the Arctic Circle. Worked for them for a year here remotely in Wilmington when I moved back east. So spent some time out west, Colorado, Texas as well. I've been licensed in 6 states. So I bring a lot of construction and design experience to the job as a consultant and, a few years of previous municipal experience. So it's a real pleasure to be here. I'm tickled to death to be part of the city of Jacksonville and very humbled to work with the people that I work with. I'm very, very blessed to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
I know.
By the way, I'd like to say one more thing because I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves often, but the issue that Wally touched on that we were dealing with, all the nighttime work and the troubleshooting that we went through and all that, that wouldn't have been possible without Wally's leadership and your creativity and troubleshooting all the issues that we were dealing with out there was outstanding work. So I just like to.
Let's give them a clap.
That's right. You really are like hands-on. Yeah.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut everyone.
We always like to hear about your adventures, Wally.
Thank you. Is there any other new business?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you.